The Battle of Adwa, fought on March 1, 1896, is a pivotal moment in African and global history. This battle, which saw the Ethiopian forces under Emperor Menelik II decisively defeat the Italian army, was more than just a military confrontation. It was a profound assertion of African sovereignty against European imperialism during the height of the scramble for Africa. The victory at Adwa not only preserved Ethiopia's independence, but also inspired anti-colonial movements across the continent and the diaspora, making it a symbol of resistance and a testament to the strategic prowess of the Ethiopian leadership. To understand the significance of the Battle of Adwa, it is essential to place it within the broader context of Ethiopian history, Italian colonial ambitions, and the geopolitical dynamics of the late 19th century. Ethiopia, known historically as Abyssinia, was one of the few African states with a long-established monarchy and a rich history of Christian civilization. By the late 19th century, Ethiopia had managed to retain its sovereignty, largely due to its formidable military traditions, its ability to navigate complex regional politics, and the leadership of astute rulers such as Emperor Menelik II. Menelik II, who ascended to the throne in 1889, was a shrewd and pragmatic leader. Understanding the threat posed by European powers, he embarked on a policy of modernization, importing weapons and training his army in European military techniques. He also pursued a cautious foreign policy, playing the European powers against each other to Ethiopia's advantage. This approach was crucial in the lead-up to the conflict with Italy. Italy, a relatively new nation-state at the time, was eager to establish itself as a colonial power. The Berlin Conference of 1884–85, which formalized the partition of Africa among European powers, fueled Italy's ambitions to expand its influence in the Horn of Africa. The Italian government initially established a foothold in the region by acquiring the coastal territories of Assab and Massawa, which eventually became the colony of Eritrea. However, the Italians harbored grander ambitions. They sought to expand their control over the Ethiopian highlands, thereby establishing a vast colonial empire in East Africa. The Treaty of Wuchel, signed in 1889 between Menelik II and Italy, was a key event that set the stage for the Battle of Adwa. The treaty was ostensibly a peace agreement, in which Menelik II recognized Italian control over Eritrea in exchange for military and financial support. However, a critical mistranslation in the treaty led to a significant dispute. The Italian version of the treaty implied that Ethiopia had become an Italian protectorate, while the Amharic version stated that Ethiopia retained its full sovereignty, with the option to use Italy's diplomatic services at its discretion. When Menelik realized the discrepancy, he renounced the treaty, refusing to cede Ethiopia's independence. Italy, emboldened by its colonial ambitions and underestimating Ethiopian military capabilities, decided to enforce its claims by military means. The Italians planned to launch a decisive campaign to subjugate Ethiopia, expecting a quick victory over what they perceived as a disorganized and backward enemy. This miscalculation would prove to be disastrous. As tensions escalated, Menelik II began mobilizing his forces. He called upon the traditional Ethiopian levy system, in which regional rulers were expected to raise and equip their own troops. Menelik's call to arms was met with an overwhelming response, as tens of thousands of warriors from various ethnic groups, including the Amhara, Oromo, Tigray, and others, rallied to defend their homeland. This diverse yet united force was a testament to Menelik's leadership and the sense of national identity he had fostered. Menelik's forces were well armed, thanks in part to the modern rifles and artillery that the emperor had acquired from European sources. The Ethiopian army also benefited from its knowledge of the local terrain and the support of the civilian population, who provided logistical assistance and intelligence. In contrast, the Italian forces, commanded by General Oris Baratieri, were plagued by overconfidence, logistical difficulties, and a lack of understanding of the Ethiopian landscape. As the Italian forces advanced into the Ethiopian highlands, Menelik II employed a strategy of attrition, drawing the Italians deeper into hostile territory while avoiding direct confrontation. This strategy allowed the Ethiopians to stretch the Italian supply lines and exhaust their troops. By the time the two armies finally faced each other near the town of Adwa, the Italians were in a weakened and vulnerable position. The Battle of Adwa began in the early hours of March 1, 1896. Menelik II had carefully positioned his forces in the mountainous terrain surrounding the Italian encampment. The Ethiopians, who significantly outnumbered the Italians, launched a coordinated assault from multiple directions, exploiting the Italians' disorganized and fragmented positions. The Italian troops, taken by surprise and unable to regroup effectively, were quickly overwhelmed. The Ethiopian warriors fought with remarkable tenacity and skill, using both traditional weapons such as spears and swords, as well as modern firearms. The rugged terrain favored the Ethiopians, who were accustomed to the mountains and used them to their advantage, launching ambushes and flanking maneuvers that disoriented the Italian forces. The battle raged for several hours, with the Ethiopians gradually gaining the upper hand. General Baratieri, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to organize a retreat, but it was too late. The Italian army disintegrated under the relentless Ethiopian assault, with many soldiers killed, captured, or scattered in the surrounding countryside. The rout was complete by midday, with the Italian forces suffering devastating losses. Estimates suggest that of the approximately 17,000 Italian and colonial troops, around 7,000 were killed, 1,500 wounded, and over 3,000 taken prisoner. In contrast, Ethiopian casualties, though significant, were much lower. The victory at Adwa was a monumental achievement for Ethiopia and a humiliating defeat for Italy. The news of the Ethiopian triumph reverberated around the world, challenging the prevailing European notions of racial superiority and the inevitability of colonial conquest. Ethiopia had not only preserved its sovereignty, but it also delivered a blow to the European imperial project in Africa. In the aftermath of the battle, Menelik II skillfully negotiated a peace settlement with Italy. The Treaty of Addis Ababa, signed in October 1896, formally recognized Ethiopia's independence and nullified the Treaty of Wuchel. Italy was forced to pay reparations and renounce its claims to Ethiopian territory. This diplomatic victory solidified Menelik's status as a respected and astute leader on the international stage. The Battle of Adwa had far-reaching implications beyond Ethiopia. It became a symbol of African resistance to colonialism and inspired nationalist movements across the continent. In the African diaspora, Adwa was celebrated as a beacon of hope and a powerful example of Black resistance against white domination. Leaders and intellectuals such as W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey drew inspiration from Ethiopia's victory, viewing it as a critical moment in the struggle for racial equality and self-determination. Ethiopia's success at Adwa also had a significant impact on European colonial policy. The battle demonstrated that African states were capable of mounting effective resistance to European expansion and that colonial ambitions would not always go unchallenged. In Italy, the defeat at Adwa led to a period of political instability and soul-searching, as the country grappled with the humiliation of its failed colonial venture. Despite the victory at Adwa, Ethiopia's independence remained precarious in the decades that followed. The pressures of modernization, internal political divisions, and continuing ambitions of European powers posed ongoing challenges to Ethiopian sovereignty. Nevertheless, the legacy of Adwa endured, serving as a powerful reminder of the country's resilience and determination to maintain its autonomy in the face of external threats. The Battle of Adwa stands as a landmark event in the history of African resistance to colonialism. It was a battle not just for territory, but for the dignity and future of an entire continent. Menelik II's leadership, the unity of the Ethiopian people, and the strategic brilliance displayed at Adwa ensured that Ethiopia would remain free in a time when much of Africa was falling under European rule. The battle's legacy continues to resonate, symbolizing the enduring struggle for freedom and self-determination in Africa and beyond.